Oh, YouTube or internet or I don't know, satellite radio? Probably not satellite radio. That makes no sense. Yeah, people of the Earth and Mars and wherever the hell. If you're watching this in the future, this was on YouTube. It was an annoying platform, mostly full of people unboxing stuff and car reviews and van life, lots of van life. Anyways, I am Taylor. Welcome to my channel. This is my review of Scott McCloud's The Sculptor. Um, it's a big old hunk of a book, and we'll get into it in a second. Stay tuned to the video to find out throughout the video, and I'll announce somewhere in here who won last week's book, the giveaway, the Thor First Blood Part 2, now Thor First Thunder. So, yeah, stay tuned. I'll announce who won that. I'm not actually going to give this one away, so if that's why you're watching, go away, people. I don't need you. I mean, I do need you. Come back. Forgive me. I didn't take it all back. But I'm going to keep this book. And my buddy Eddie tends to say that you only keep the good books, and that's kind of true because I don't want to keep bad books. But also, it's not just that. I keep books that I think I would want to like have some meaning to, or I would want to reread later, and that fits that category. It's a and there's gonna be some spoilers. If you don't want any spoilers, just go read this thing. You can. I don't know if it's still in print. I'm guessing so, but I found this at a used bookstore for $10. And yeah, it's almost 500 pages. It's a big old chunk, but I'd say it's worth hunting down. It is, yeah, it's a poignant read. It's frustrating. Uh, I was kind of in tears a bit by the end of it all, and yeah, it's a. It's also a surprisingly quick read. I made it through it in about in an afternoon, um, and I'll touch on why that is in a little bit too. But yeah, the short answer is just read the book. But from now on out, we're gonna have a little bit of spoiler goodness for Scott McCloud, The Sculptor. It's a story basically of David Smith. Okay, and there's a joke in here. If you know Sculptor, David Smith's a very famous sculptor of the 20th century. This is not that David Smith. This is some other sculptor named David Smith who wants to be famous. He's obsessed with getting recognition for his art, and that's the crux of this story. That's the nugget. That's sort of like where it all begins. And he's frustrated that he's not getting recognition. He also tends to burn bridges. He's not a very nice person necessarily. He's difficult. He's squirrely. He's antagonistic with people that are trying to help him, and he assumes the worst in people a lot. So he's a flawed character, but he's obsessed with fame. And at the beginning of the book, he has not found fame as an artist, and he's about ready to give up. And then he ends up making a deal with death. So it does enter the fantasy realm a bit, but the way it does it is not. It's not trite, and it's not lightly done. I mean, this does tell a pretty deep story with a pretty strong message about living without fear and without worry, and also to realize that like what you think might be your dreams might not actually be what's best for you, and it's okay to give up on certain things, and it's okay to like just let yourself be happy in the moment. And so there's a lot of that in here. And you like it takes a while to get to all those messages, and they're not thrown at you. It's thrown in a fairly they're presented in a fairly organic way, even though it's somewhat of a fantastical tale. David ends up meeting this woman named Meg, who's and they fall in love. But meanwhile, I'm going to back up a bit because there's the bargain with the death is kind of also the thing. David has 200 days before he dies. And in that 200 days, he's able to make as much art as he wants, and he's promised that he will gain recognition for it by death. He's not allowed to tell anybody about this bargain, or yada, yada, yada. It's got some of the typical tropes as far as like that kind of thing goes. But yeah, that's it. And in those, and it's one of those like, of course, he starts living life when death is imminent. And yeah, and he meets this woman named Meg. They fall in love. They have a tumultuous, very quick but very up and down relationship because they're, like I said, David's a difficult character, a difficult person, and he feels like a fleshed out person. And so does Meg. And Meg also has issues, like she's got some mental health issues, and some some trauma, and some past trauma and stuff that she's dealing with. And so like it feels not like a real relationship because like it is like framed within the you have 200 days to get your wish kind of narrative, but it does feel authentic, if that makes sense. It doesn't feel like a fake relationship, and it's a great story, and I think everyone should probably pick this up if you can find it and read it. I really do. It's sort of Scott McCloud is the person that wrote and illustrated Understanding Comics and a couple other books that are about comic books, and so like this is him. Not necessarily flexing his muscles, but just practicing what he preaches. So, like there's speeding up and slowing down of time. There is like a few narrative tricks he uses and visual tricks, and like with the gutter and page layout, although it is fairly typical and straightforward for the most part, which I actually do appreciate. I believe he lettered it as well, and so this is all a one-man thing, and it's in two color. Like this blue, light blue is the same, and black and white. That's it throughout. It's a fairly simple. The illustrations are not sparse. I mean, there are city backgrounds and there's detail in here, and there's definitely like an attention to landscape and fairly realistic landscape at that. The characters are simplified and cartoony, but I mean, kind of all comics are. But they're emotive, and he's great at expressing emotion in these sort of simple lines. And what he really excels in is a fantastic visual storyteller. Like you're never confused as to what's going on in this story as far as like the plot goes. You may be confused a little bit about the motivations and stuff, or you're like frustrated with the motivations of the characters. But there's never a moment where you're like, what in the hell's happening? Or like, where should my eye go? What panel should I read next? There's never any of that in this. Like a lot of comics nowadays where like it's all flash and no substance in visually and storytelling wise. Like there's issues. Sorry, get it? Issues, comic book issues. There's problems that like a lot of modern comics have, where like like anatomically sound and visually dynamic artists cannot tell a proper story visually. And Scott is an exceptional storyteller in that regard, and he manages to like do it with a self like limiting palette and a strict set of sort of like you can sort of tell he's got these strict guidelines that he did visually, and he doesn't break from them, but he still manages to tell a beautiful, poignant story. And it like I said, it's a beast of a book, and it was published in this form. It's not meant to be. It was never meant to be single issues, and you could tell. I mean, this is one long, like comic novel for the most part. It's broken into chapters, but they're not the same as issues. You know, like they're really not. It's just like chapter 3, the promise, and like you learn character motivations and backgrounds, and then what also I like is it's not every aspect of these characters' background is explained. Like it's sort of understood that there's past trauma or past grief, and like you do learn some of the details, but you don't learn everything. And I don't think you need to learn everything about every character. Like Boba Fett was much more interesting before you learned about him. I know, Star Wars reference in a very non-Star Wars book, but yeah, it's pick this one up. The funny thing is though, like it's a book about this sculptor that makes art and like gets recognition, and he does find some like success that way. But the actual sculptures that Scott does illustrate are pretty terrible. They're pretty trite and awful and on the nose, and I think that's probably on purpose. I think like Scott does have enough of a developed visual eye to know that like he's making pretty corny sculptures in this book, and that I think that maybe a slight nod in joke, or the fact that this character doesn't deserve what he's after, or doesn't like thinks he's worthy of like being a world famous artist, but is unwilling to objectively look at his own art and compare himself to others and realize that flaws in himself, and that actually probably is one of the messages with all these characters. They all do have trouble relating to their own flaws. And so, yeah, now that I think about it, I think that is probably on the nose, and I think that's probably a reason why McCloud did that. It is another layer of this, where, like, this fixation that this main character has with, like, getting recognition for his art isn't really warranted, necessarily. And so, yeah, the recognition's not really warranted. The desire, I mean, you can want whatever you want in life, but like the world doesn't really owe you things. And even though this character makes a deal with death, that does end up, helping him out in certain regards and stuff. And yeah, there's okay, I'm rambling all over the place. I will say there's a satisfying conclusion in here too. It wraps up beautifully. In a somewhat unexpected way. I mean, it's not out of left field. Like the ending is deserved, and you understand where it comes from and why, and it's fitting, but it's not what I expected the ending necessarily to be. If that makes any sense, probably not, because I'm just rambling my way through this mess. But yeah, The Sculptor. If you can find it, I'd say definitely go pick it up, especially if you're looking for something that is not a horror action romp, a post-apocalyptic, space adventure or superhero stuff. If you want like an intimate story about two people and their relationship and like their inner thoughts and their inner workings in the world and like their frustration with life and they're just dealing with like the nuts and bolts of surviving, then I'd say The Sculptor's for you. If that doesn't sound like anything that would interest you, then just don't read it. I don't know. Whatever. It's fine. Go read Superman. You don't have to worry about it. It's a guy wearing red underwear. The outside is clothes and flies around the planet and turns back time like an 80s song. Yeah, that's not this. This is totally different. All right, so there you go. That's my quick-ish review of The Sculptor. I don't want to give away all the spoilers. I think I probably told enough of the plot without hopefully wrecking it. And honestly, the plot is sort of secondary. It's just what the emotions and stuff that are conveyed in here that are probably more important than the plot. So, yeah, that's what I've got on that one. Thor: First Thunder, the winner of that book is... Hang on, can I point the right corner now? I'm trying to do this looking at my screen. There we go. Oh, wait. Oh, my God. I'm doing this all wrong. Las Cruces. Thank you, sir. Las Cruces. Just hit me up on Instagram, and I will get this out to you. Just let me know you've seen the video, or drop a comment down below. I think I probably have your contact info, maybe. I don't know. I can't remember. Remembering things is hard, people. But, thank you. And also, a personal thank you, Las Cruces. Thank you for watching all of my content and supporting it. It really does mean a lot to me. And thank you to all of you. I know a lot of you watch my stuff and don't comment and don't necessarily interact, and that's fine. I don't expect you to on everything. That's ridiculous. But I just want to say I appreciate my viewers. It does mean a lot to me. There's days when I just don't feel like making content, and there's days where I just feel cranky and like, just not into it. But I do always like the interaction with the audience, and I like the fact that, and I'm still baffled by the fact that people watch me and they pay any kind of attention to what I say. But I appreciate it, and thank you for that. So, listen, I'm going to get out of here. And so I'm going to have to figure out a clever, witty way to say don't be a dick at the end of this one. All right, how about this? Even if you don't get what you want out of life, or don't think you're getting what you want out of life, don't be a dick. All right, I'll see you later.